As a practitioner, when you're trying to address kind of that resistance, I would say there can be a bit of a complex nature to it depending on the individual. How do you approach it? Because like Bear's example, me personally knowing Bear, it's like, yeah, even if it takes a week or two, like he's going to get back on the train. Whereas you, I'm sure in your practice, you see individuals where like it's been years that are stacked on top of each other of kind of a body not in motion. So when how do you individualize kind of addressing that resistance and kind of know, okay, here's my starting point to get them to maybe start to move or just perceive even their daily habits in a different way?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I do think, like you had alluded to already, it is somewhat individual. So every person I will approach differently depending on where they're coming from. But a common pattern is we start really high level. It's like, why do you want to be healthy in the first place? What is the why behind why you're, trying to achieve health, or why you're here with me? Because usually people don't go to pay to work with a nutritionist because they want to stay the same. There's something motivating them. And so if we start addressing the high level why, really bringing out like the reason behind it. Do you want to age well so you can play with your grandkids? Are you faced with some blood work that's showing that you're on track to, develop a chronic disease of some kind? Usually there's a big why, and reminding people of that kind of ongoing throughout, because the why is the foundational piece of any journey. It's like, I would love to know like what your why is, why you started, what drives you on a daily basis to achieve peak and optimal health. For me, I want to be a really fit mom. I have really small kids, age 3 and 4. I want to be able to crush workouts with my sons. I want to be able to hike mountains with my sons. I want to be able to be like one of the fittest, 56-year-old women around. Some of these things are the reason that drives me. And so when I get into a lull, or I even go about trying to do something that I've never done before, that is really the justification for me as to why I'm going to go into it with more commitment. So I tend to start really high level with people. What is your why? And then let's define some standards around your lifestyle based on that why.
And then what are some methods as you, like, let's say you're working with a client and the why gets established, but as you get, and I'm sure we've all experienced this on some level, you get 6 months into it and you start to see them kind of falling off the horse slightly. What are some practical tips or takeaways you would give the listeners on kind of, like you said, rooting back into that why? But I'm sure it's usually, it's not as, if it were simple as that, everyone would do it. So what are some tips and takeaways to, like, hey, not only keep consistent on the why behind it, but here are some other practical ways to make sure you're keeping your perception of the why and making sure your habits and actions align with that.
I think establishing some guardrails is really important for yourself. Um, and a lot of that involves understanding where you fail, or where your weaknesses are. And so I do work with people on, identifying their weaknesses. We work together to build strategies to mitigate those weaknesses or foreshadow failure. So if you're someone who, middle of the day when you're working, stress overwhelms you because you've been on 6 hours of Zoom calls and you tend to stress eat, what is the strategy we need to put in place to make sure that you're choosing the right foods, or that you're avoiding the bad ones? Does it mean we don't even buy them? Does it mean, they're on the top shelf of your pantry? Does it mean you keep stuff in the freezer? Like, there are so many different ways you can cater these sort of like mitigation strategies for people. And those are really individual, because what works for one person might not work for another person. So it is really about foreshadowing your failure, and that, and I wish I could give you like a one size fits all kind of like set of strategies, but it comes down to understanding yourself, recognizing where your behaviors aren't aligning with your future self that you envisioned, and developing some really, really effective strategies to mitigate where you fall off. So yeah, that would be and that's different for everyone. So.
Well, I think, have either of you read the book Atomic Habits?
Hmm.
By chance, have you
It's
read
been
it?
a while, but yeah.
Okay. I'm like halfway through. And I think I'm going to butcher this in the theme of it. So whoever the author is, I'm sorry. But I think what we're getting at is it has to drill down a layer deeper than the surface level stuff. Right. And I was thinking about this. Okay. You know, little shit that I was trying to tighten up in my life that are not big things, but it was frustrating me that because especially with a military background, discipline has always been important to me. And like, you know what I mean? You get that, you can never like get rid of it. But little things like, you know, when I change my clothes, when I get home from work, I would like just kind of throw them in a heap on the dresser, and I'd throw like sweatpants on, you know, get comfortable. And then before I know it, by the end of the week, like I have a bunch of clothes piled on my dresser, and I'm like, all right, I'm a 36-year-old grown ass man. And you walk in my room and you look at the dresser and it looks like a fucking teenager lives there. You know what I mean? And I was like, why do I accept that as a standard? And it was so stupid, but it was like I had to go a layer down and be like, all right, do I want to be that messy guy? You know what I mean? Or do I want to be fucking squared away and dialed in? Like, what do I want my identity to be? Now, no one's really walking in, no one's going to see that, but that's a personal pride thing. So now every time when I get home from work, again, this is so stupid. It's a dumb example, but all right, I take my jeans off. I fold them, put them on a hanger, right? Every time. Like I do it right away. Same thing with like the dishes, right? It's little things. It's like, all right, have a little bit of pride in what you're doing. And that it's at an identity level. And for training, that one's an easy one for me, because I think, you know, that's always been a part of my identity. So I don't have to like really go deep on that one, because like we train just as what we do, and we want to maintain physical capabilities, and I want to be able to protect my family if shit ever goes down. So there's plenty of reasons there, but I realized I was a little bit sloppy in other aspects of my life, and I couldn't adopt good habits. And I was like, all right, this is so ridiculous. I'm dialed in a lot of other areas, but then I can't put my goddamn clothes away, and I'm 36 years old. So that one of the chapters in the book, I kind of extracted that theme. And it's been like a month, but it's really working really well. Like there's no clothes on my dresser right now. You know what I mean? Like I put the sweatpants away in the morning when I get dressed, and it's stupid, but does that resonate with some of the lessons you try to teach to your clients? And hopefully maybe for anyone listening that might like apply, and go read the book. I'm halfway through it. It's very practical, and they're short chapters. They're easy reads, but, what do you think about that?
Yeah, Bear, that was such a beautiful example of exactly what I'm talking about. You know, your future self, you're probably pretty close to the, optimal future self you want to be. But there was one aspect of you that you're like, in the future, I don't want to be a person who is a slob, or however you define that. So my future self is somebody who keeps their shit tidy. And so by defining, who you want to be in the future, and then creating a standard that you live by to reflect that future self, these are the conversations I have a lot with people. What does your future self look like? Are you someone who drinks 6 beers every Saturday afternoon? Are you someone who prioritizes working out in the morning? By visioning and creating that version of yourself that you want to be, what do they do? What do they look like? What kind of mindset do they have? What thoughts, what do they tell themselves? Having an idea of who that is and who you're working toward being makes it a lot easier to then, create the standard and then set the strategies that will help you get there. And that is such a great example.